confirm we are now live streaming and the meeting can commence. Just to confirm, we have the following members in attendance today. We have Councillor James Roberts, we have Councillor Allan Brame, Councillor Steff O'Keefe, Councillor Lisa Preston, Councillor Les Byrom, Councillor Dan Barrington, Councillor Lesley Rennie and Councillor Jean Stapleton. All members have confirmed that they can see and be seen and can hear and be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so welcome everyone to this meeting of Merseyside Fire and Rescue Authority's Policy and Resources Committee. I'm Councillor James Roberts, I'm the chair of the committee. So I'll explain how the meeting will work. I'll run us through this housekeeping. During the meeting, all microphones and cameras should be switched off, with the exception of myself and any presenting officers other than as directed by the meeting facilitator. Should anyone leave the meeting for any reason, the meeting will continue unless it's no longer quorate. Could you please ensure that any items relating to personal, private, confidential or exempt information are not visible through your camera or screen sharing until any press and public have been excluded from the meeting. Please be advised that all the proceedings of this meeting will be recorded and broadcast on YouTube live for members of the public to see. Please ensure that when you're not speaking, your microphone remains on mute and that your camera is switched off. If you wish to speak at any point, please turn on your camera and raise your hand, or alternatively indicate via the chat function. The meeting facilitator will then unmute your microphone and invite you to speak at the appropriate time. When I request you all to approve or note an item, I'll ask you to turn on your camera and the meeting facilitator will then unmute everyone. If you have any issues with this, then this will be your opportunity to raise them, and silence will be taken as approval. So we can proceed to the agenda. So we've had notification of apologies from Councillor Makinson. Do we have any further ones?
Councillor Makinson, Councillor Angela Coleman, and that is it, just Councillor Makinson and Councillor Coleman.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest that need to be made? No. Okay. Matters of urgency. I don't think there are any matters of urgency that need to be admitted onto the agenda. There is an exempt item that requires the exclusion of the press and public if we wish to discuss it, and that's item 3. So we'll come to that when we come to it. So for now, item 2. Minutes of the previous meeting. So could all members of the committee now turn on your cameras and your microphones, and it'll provide you to an opportunity to raise any issue that you want to raise with regard to the minutes. If anyone could just switch the cameras on now. Okay. Does anyone have any issues with the minutes that they'd like to raise? No? Okay. In that case, we'll take that as confirmation that they should be approved. So we'll move on to item 3. These are exempt. Sorry?
Can I just say that my camera won't switch on? It says it's got to be switched on by the host.
Okay. Okay. Okay, we'll take that into consideration. Item 3. Okay, these are exempt minutes. If anyone wants to raise any substantive issues about these minutes, then we'll shift the agenda around and we'll move this to the end. But if we're happy to just accept them, then we can accept them now. So is there anybody who wants to raise any issues about the exempt minutes? No, no indications. Okay. In that case, then, if we're all happy to take them as agreed. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to item 4. So we've got agenda item 4, which is the service delivery plan update for April to December. And this is the Chief Officer. So
yeah, thanks, Chair. Okay, members, the purpose of the report is to request that members scrutinise the performance against the objectives and the performance targets outcomes as set out in the Service Delivery Plan 2020 to 2021 for specifically the period April to December 2020, and the Integrated Risk Management Plan actions and the HMFRS action plan will be reported twice a year at the end of the year. And the recommendation itself is that the members approve the attached report for publication on the website. So if I can share, I'll just take members through the kind of the highlights of the report itself, and specifically focus in on the service delivery plan report, which is contained in pages 29 onwards. The service delivery plan for October-December kind of references a number of actions which are contained within functional plans. My intention would be only to highlight the areas which were are either amber or red, and provide a supporting narrative of why that is currently the case, albeit we've still got a quarter of the year to go until it's concluded. The first one to bring to members' attention is in relation to training and the work around the feasibility and study in regarding the redevelopment of the Training Development Academy in Croxteth. And members will be aware we're currently out of consultation about a potential new build of a training facility on Long Lane. As a result of that kind of work has not progressed in the light of the changes that we are seeking to implement from an authority perspective. But obviously that is subject to public consultation, and should the public decide that they don't want to progress with the site at Long Lane, it will be that we will revert back to that particular set of action. The next action, which is amber, relates to some of the work we do around EXEMPT, so Joint Emergency Service Interoperability Programme, and that's just a refresh of the 3-year cycle, which will be done and concluded by the end of the plan itself. Moving on to page 32, there's a reference to site risk information, which would be information presented to crews, and members will be aware we've developed a SIRA application. However, given the fact that we've been provided with some governmental funding, the intention is to move to a new system which would join up 3 different applications. So risk information at scene, with protection information held by protection officers, with prevention information held by prevention staff. So all of those systems now would talk to each other. And that is the introduction of a community fire risk management information system, which would cover all aspects. As a result of that, we've chosen not to progress the SIRA application as it stands. If you turn on to page 34, there's a comprehensive review of the courier staffing ways of working that is still ongoing and would hopefully be concluded by the end of this financial year. In regards to the work around the Training and Development Academy facilities at Croxteth, again, that's linked into an ED&I action plan. But as I say, as we're now looking at a new build proposal, we have paused that particular issue. Moving on to page 35, we are awaiting the introduction of Vision 5, a mobilising system within the fire control room, before progressing with 999I, as it's reliant on the upgrade of the command and control system, which is in progress now, and that system should be in again by the end of this financial year. Moving through the next few pages, which are all green and progressing well. We are working with station managers, watch managers, to build and improve the quality, diversity and inclusion data being collected through the home fire safety check. But again, as the number of home fire safety checks and that proactive response into communities has been paused through COVID, that has not progressed to the extent we would want it to, but we will revisit that as soon as we are back on the front foot in our communities. And then as we move on to page 41, again, very similar really, which was the expansion of the volunteers programme. We haven't been able to progress that as it stands, albeit we've got a significant number of volunteers who are heavily involved in the response to the pandemic, vaccination and so on. We have been unable to progress that, given the fact that we're unable to bring external volunteers into the service as it stands based on COVID. And that extends again to the work we do with children and young people, which is and some of those activities, with the exception of the Prince's Trust, being temporarily suspended during the COVID period. Moving on again to the specifics. I know members were due to have a learn and lunch focused in on Merseyside Fire and Risk Service response to the Grenfell Tower inquiry. We're making significantly good progress in that response, but there are a couple of things which are outside of our gift, which are legislative changes, which we would have to wait till they are made through government. And we're still waiting on that legislative change to take place. So a couple of those areas are amber. And then as we finally move through into equality and diversity and inclusion actions, There was some training which was due for protection staff around trafficking and modern slavery, again, which is being paused whilst we move through the COVID period. We will revisit that and move to a virtual presentation rather than necessarily a face-to-face presentation. Again, moving on to page 46, there's the developments of the NR website, so the National Resilience website, which will be done and completed by the end of the year, and that will link into LearnPro and online training for equality, diversity, inclusion. Again, that will be concluded by the conclusion of the year. And then finally, there will be a communication strategy which is scheduled and will be again completed by the end of this financial year. So outside of that, the vast majority of the actions within the functional plans are green and progressing well. And I'm happy to take any questions on that, Chair, before I move on to talk about the performance of the service as contained within the service delivery plan, if warranted. Okay, if there's no questions, I will move on to look at the performance, which starts on page 61 and moves through. Our performance against all of our benchmark indicators are really positive. So total number of emergency calls received is on target and below target. Again, similar for number of operational incidents attended, number of fires attended, number of primary fires attended is all really positive. The only area which is amber and just above target is the number of deliberate dwelling fires in occupied premises. And some of those issues are linked directly into serious and organised crime, as which we've referred to previously, and we are working with our police colleagues to address any concerns, and will continue to do so through the really strong and positive relationships that we have in place. Other than that, the performance is really strong against all performance indicators, and the one I would draw your particular attention to is on page 73, which is the percentage of available shifts lost to sickness absence. It's currently green and at 4% sickness absence levels, and that is despite COVID. And so self-evidently the work that we've been doing to protect our staff has been exceptional. And more latterly, we have now introduced lateral flow tests, which are undertaken regularly across all stations and all premises to ensure that we are limiting the transmission of any potential virus. But the fact of the matter is we've managed sickness absence particularly well through the period by strong, robust personal protection and health surveillance arrangements that we've had in place. So, Chair, I'll pause at that particular point. Certainly from a performance point of view, with the exception of one indicator, a really strong performance in this quarter. And again, probably hopefully reassurance that the progression we're making against the functional plans is strong and robust, with the exception of some delays due to COVID and one particularly related to changes or potential changes to our integrated risk management plan to relocate our training facilities at an alternative site on Long Lane. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
And do we have any questions then from committee members?
No one's indicated, Chair.
Okay, in that case, are we happy to accept the report? The members need to turn their cameras on. I think they should. Okay. Should we take the approve the report then?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you.
Agreed.
Moving on to item 5, which is the service delivery plan, not just the update.
Indeed, this is that was the backward-looking service delivery plan update. Agenda item 5 is the forward-looking service delivery plan for 2021-22, which contains all of our functional plans, station plans, R&P objectives and actions, and includes the kind of the performance indicators that we are seeking to achieve this year. The purpose of the report is that to ensure that members consider and approve the service delivery plan for 2021-22 as attached in Appendix 1, and the community fire and rescue station plans as attached in Appendix 2. And the recommendation specifically that members consider and improve the attached service delivery plan and station plans for 2021-22 prior to publication of the design version on the authority's website. And what members will see is the service delivery plan as probably previously described, but equally, there is access now to the station plans which have been developed by the station manager in conjunction with the operational crews, and it's really targeted to the distillation of our overarching plans into local actions, and you'll see evidence of really both bespoke and specific actions which are taken by particular stations and particular operational crews. So for the likes of Liverpool City, a heightened level of focus on high-rise buildings, business premises, and so on and so forth. But the alternative to that would be the likes of Heswell, where their focus will be on vulnerable, isolated individuals who are in communities who are particularly vulnerable to fire-related activity. So the focus will be slightly different, and hence the reason why the station plans are reflective of the environment and the area that particular station responds to. So, Chair, I'm happy to talk through the broad thrust of the plan or any particular aspect of it. But as I say, it takes the functional plans, the service, the integrated risk management plans and station plans, and brings them all together in one place. And as members previously will be aware, we will report that back on a quarterly basis of updates against and progress against the plans. Happy to take any specific questions, Chair.
Do members have any questions about the plan? Are there any substantial changes with previous iterations of the plan?
Well, I suppose not in relation to the performance indicators. Performance indicators remain relatively the same, albeit the targets will shift and the targets will become more challenging based on the previous year's performance. And as members will recall, we go back over the last 5 years and then we will amend the targets to reflect our performance. So if our performance has improved year on year over the previous 4 years, the 5th year target becomes even more challenging for us to attain, and that is kind of balanced out through the progress. So the target will reflect the circumstances and the environment that we've operated in. On this occasion, though, given the fact that we've operated through a COVID year, and it's been particularly different, I would say, to adopt changes on the basis of operating during COVID would be probably askew our approach to some degree. So the intention has been to maintain the targets as previously the year before, and that will be mirrored and carried through. In regards to the integrated risk management plan and the objectives and the actions within, those are obviously contained within the RMP. They are different, and so this is the formation of our RMP from 2021 through to 2024, and again they will be reported back and delivered, and the functional plans that are in place as previously reported in the last report, will be a distillation of our integrated risk management plan. So the approach and the thrust, and actually on this occasion, the targets are the same as they were previously, based on us working through a particularly challenging period of COVID. So very much a similar process. The station plans will have changed, but those station plans again will complement the RMP actions. So we are saying, from a global perspective, we will do 60,000 home fire safety checks. Those 60,000 home fire safety checks are distributed between prevention teams and operational crews. And self-evidently, we haven't done anywhere near that level this year, but that target will remain the same. And so they are spread across all stations and all prevention teams, and we'll continue to deliver those over the course of the next 12 months.
Okay. Councillor Byrom.
Yes, thank you. If there's no other generalised points, just something that we have discussed before, this being a public meeting, you've mentioned about COVID. There are an awful lot of properties on the high street, factories, warehouses which are closed, staff furloughed. There will be a great change in the way buildings are used, and I'm sure that this will affect our own response, if not performance. But there's no point planning on that until, in terms of a forward-looking plan, until we have better intelligence and information on the world post-COVID, the new world, as we say. And to that extent, I also want to make the point, and I'm sure members will join with me, as we pass the 1-year anniversary of the first lockdown, we sent out a message to all of our staff to say thank you. Thank you for all of the efforts that people have put in, the privations, the difficulties, the worry, the heartache. We are very proud of our staff, and I'm sure that the population of Merseyside is also very grateful for knowing that day and night, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, the fire service is there to try and give help. As we say, they are running in when other people are running out. Has been the case, is the case, and will be the case. So thank you to the staff, officers, and everyone involved at Mersey Fire, and to my colleague members of the Fire Authority as well. I think we need to record that. It's not over yet, and there will be more, but thank you for all you've done so far. That's all from me, Chair.
Thanks, Ed. Okay, are there any other questions from other committee members? Councillor Brame.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, just following on from what Councillor Byrom said, it's great that the people know the fire service is there ready to serve them when needed. But one thing, I noticed one target that was missed was the number of responses to false alarms, over 5,000. And obviously this isn't something that's entirely within our control, but it is extremely disturbing that we've got that many number of calls to our officers, wasting time, wasting money, and possibly endangering other people if a real emergency were to arise while they're attending a false alarm. Are there any steps that we can take to reduce this?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Councillor Brame. If I took you back a number of years, we changed our response to automatic fire alarms, and that's seen a significant reduction in the number of calls that we would respond to, because you're quite right, in the region of 97% of those calls would be false, unwanted and unwarranted, and certainly that would detract us from our core statutory responsibilities to respond to fires, actual fires. And equally, it takes you away from your training and so on and so forth. So trying to minimise the deployment of resources unnecessarily as being a kind of a key aspect of the work. False alarms is described a multitude, to be perfectly honest with you. So I'll dissect them a little bit. So our policy around automatic fire alarm systems is quite good and robust. We have made a policy decision as the authority that we would continue to go to domestic property, sleep and risk. Given the fact that we wouldn't, we mobilise each and every time we thought that someone could be, lose their life in a fire as a result of that particular event. We're seeing a more extensive utilisation of those systems in people's homes as the population ages. People wanting to stay in the home, so call line systems and so on, is increased, and as a result of that, there is an increase in demand placed on the fire and rescue service, of which we are well aware. The other thing I would say, it's particularly during this year and the early stages of COVID, there was a lot of fires outdoors, so in people's homes, back gardens. As you will recall, there was tips were closed and so on and so forth. People were burning refuge in the back of their gardens. As a result of that, there was a significant number of calls, false alarms, because indeed the fire was a fire, but actually the fire was controlled, and as a result of that, it was described as a false alarm, good intent. So the intentions were good, but the requirement for the fire and rescue service to extinguish the fire wasn't warranted. And somewhat similar happened during the bonfire period. So a lot of residents, a lot of our communities had fireworks and fires in their premises, their properties, because there wasn't any organised events. And as a result of that, again, we've seen a significant number of false alarm, good intent calls during that period. Those things combined are the reason why we've had significant numbers of false alarms. But actually, we are absolutely focused on reducing them because of the point you made earlier, which is a significant number of them are unwanted or unnecessary. What we wouldn't want people to do, however, is not to call a fire and rescue service if they thought a neighbouring property was on fire. So there's a balance there, and certainly what we wouldn't want to do is not attend a premise of a vulnerable individual whose care line has operated on the back of us presuming it is a false call. So we've continued policy-wise to respond to those particular incidents. But they are problematic, they are challenging, and we through prevention and protection departments seek to address that and challenge that on every occasion. Hopefully that answers your question, Councillor Byrom.
Yeah, thank you very much for that response.
Was that Councillor Rennie?
Yeah, thanks for that, Chair. Can I just ask the Chief, please? Clearly over the last summer period, when we had the good weather and the restrictions on COVID were somewhat less restricted than they are at the moment, there was a number of incidents, particularly on the Wirral, but I'm sure, you know, colleagues from Sefton councils and beyond would have the same, of people on the beaches, and I'm talking now from a Wirral point of view, but clearly not observing any tide timetables or anything at all, little knowledge of how to behave and how to respect the sea and the incoming tides, really. Could you just, as I say, because we, you know, it is going out live, perhaps give just a quick rundown of how the fire service have been absolutely brilliant, you know, in my opinion anyway, and I'm sure in that of the number of residents that have been rescued, working in collaboration with the lifeguards, who clearly only work mostly during the summer, but with the RNLI and also the Coast Guard. If you could just give us a quick rundown on that, and perhaps what campaigns we could do with the you know, the impending summer coming, which obviously everyone's looking forward to, and perhaps people staying at home for holidays and staying local and enjoying what we've got.
Yeah, well, absolutely, and we wouldn't want to stop people enjoying the extensive offers of Merseyside, to be perfectly honest with you. But the fact of the matter is, you know, as we start to plan for the summer period, it's quite reasonable that we will see more people utilising some of the green spaces, and you know, we've got particular focus on parts of the Wirral and Formby Pine Woods. Really, we've had some, you know, particular issues and prolonged fire and rescue service activity there over certainly 2018 for sure, and 2019 to a degree. So we do what is, why we describe as, you know, a site-specific risk assessment of a premise. We also extend that into some of our green space. So we will have plans in place at both Thurston Common and also Formby Pine Woods to be able to respond to incidents at those locations as agilely and as quickly as we possibly can do, with some prior deployments of kit and equipment and some pre-planning. So that is now starting to plan in that way. You'll also be aware that as part and parcel of our integrated management plan proposals, we are seeking to introduce wildfire teams at both Heswell and Formby to be able to proactively manage those sites too. And provide them with the kit and equipment to be able to respond really effectively into those particular locations and outside of Merseyside to national events as well, given our lead authority responsibilities. So a lot of proactive work being undertaken now around, you know, hot weather rather than necessarily kind of flooding and so on. If you look at the kind of the coastal response, and whilst shops have been locked down and you know, people have been still encouraged to take their daily walks, you know, people have used green space, the coast, a lot more than they would have done ordinarily, and we have done some proactive campaigns around the safe, you know, access to those particular locations. But we have had a number of incidents where we have had to deploy fire and rescue service resources in line with the RNLI and the Coast Guard to deal with individuals who've got themselves in a little bit of trouble, and you know, and that is always problematic, and we would always encourage people to think before they act in an appropriate manner. But we are working with our colleagues to educate and inform and ensure that the people who inadvertently get themselves in trouble are better informed next time around. But we've got really strong working relationships with all of the emergency responders around the coastline, and you know, and we continue to work really effectively as a partnership to negate any issues that we might endure.
That's fine. Thank you very much. Thank you for that.
And back to you, Councillor Byrom.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to add in on that very point, we've had a number of cases recently of fires, as Councillor Rennie said, coastal, shrubland. But the interesting point is that several of these areas have been identified by the police and local authority as exclusion zones, and there's been, dispersal zones. Dispersal zones notices put in. Now, our role in that is to assist, not to enforce. And it's just one of those urban things that we need to be aware of and assist with. I just make those comments. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, Chair, and if I may just add to that, obviously, members will be aware we have the, our intervention team, so our street intervention team, and albeit a sand unit isn't a street, but they have been deployed into those locations where the dispersal zones to educate and inform, to not necessarily enforce, but to be relatively assertive in why an individual shouldn't be gathered in large groups during a period of lockdown and so on and so forth. That's been really positive and really positive received by the communities in which the predominantly young people are gathering. So it is that assertive intervention which has worked really effectively, and we are deploying those teams across the whole of Merseyside.
Yeah. So. Chair, can I just come back on that one really? And again, just a thank you really, because clearly Merseyside Fire and Rescue now have powers under the public space protection orders, and it's been really welcomed, particularly I know I'm being a little bit parochial, but down on what we call the dips in Wallasey, in my ward, and then further on into New Brighton ward as well. So it's good to see the fire service engaged with, obviously as they always do, with local partners and local authorities and with the police as well. So thank you very much for supporting that initiative as well. Thanks, Chair. That's all.
All right. Are there any further questions?
No more have been indicated, Chair.
Okay. Well, if everyone can turn their cameras back on for me then, please. Okay. Do we accept the report?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Great, thank you.
There's no dissent. Okay, that's approved. Okay, thank you. You can turn your cameras off again, and we can move on to the next one, which is the charging policy, item 6. Chief?
I think Mr. Cummins may well talk to this. Ian, are you?
Yeah, I can talk to the report, Chair. Okay. The service, along with other fire and rescue services, charges for various activities and goods as permitted under the Fire and Rescue Services Act. The purpose of this report is to bring the permitted charges under an overarching charging policy document to ensure, as per paragraph 7, current charging arrangements are applied consistently across the service, and, as per paragraph 8, improve transparency with users of chargeable service goods by having a formal charging policy on the service website to refer customers to if required. The proposed charging policy is attached to the report as Appendix A and provides the background to the policy and details of the chargeable activities. Any charge levied is based on a cost recovery basis only, and as per paragraph 13, reflects the cost inputs in delivering the service. Appendix B outlines the proposed schedule of charges for 21-22, but note that the items listed under P, other fire safety equipment, reflect the charges to a partner agencies for carrying out specific campaigns on their behalf, rather than services available to the general public. The report sets out in paragraphs 16 to 25 the billing and payments process that is consistent with the financial regulations. Appendix C outlines the proposed wording to be used on the website to outline to organisations and the public the proposed charging policy if they wish to use a chargeable MFRS service. Members are asked to approve the charging policy, which is not proposing any new chargeable services, but is simply bringing under one document the current chargeable service arrangements in order to assist with a consistent and transparent approach for chargeable services. I'm happy to take any questions on the report, Chair.
Do members have any comments or questions on the report?
Members have indicated, Chair.
Okay. I was wondering if we, looking at the list of services that we provide here, just to some extent, it looks like we're either sort of a monopoly provider of these services, or at the very least, we've got a significant market advantage as a result of our reputation. I was wondering if there was a conflict that we have to balance between our necessity to serve the people of Merseyside and to prevent risk, but also to ensure that we don't, in the words of the report, unduly disadvantage our competitors on providing services. I was wondering if, if there was actually a conflict there.
I think if you think the special services is a useful one to look at, and particularly lift rescues, there's a danger about state aid. If you take, say, a hotel company, we've had a hotel chain that we've done a number of lift rescues at. If we didn't charge for that service, there are private companies who could offer a similar function, and we could be accused of state aid, doing a charge either as a service at a subsidised rate or for free. So actually, to some degree, it's sometimes the opposite. If we don't charge, for these services, local companies could go out of business when we look at the special services, the lift rescues, or sometimes, a private landlord's accommodation, tenants are locked outside their premises, and it's not a health or humanity or welfare issue, and they simply ring the fire services up to come and rescue them. So to a degree, the charges are there, I think, to have a level playing field with private facilitators. Or if you take the smoke alarms provision, often we provide it free if it's a vulnerable group. But if a normal person just wishes to get a smoke alarm put in, again, if we didn't charge for that alarm, B&Q and others could be saying we're putting them out of business. So to some degree, it's about ensuring that we're not putting private business, out of business and having an unfair competition.
That makes sense to me. Thanks. I like the idea that we can be that we can offer a fair but not subsidised service to corporate actors, people who ask for our help as part of their business, while at the same time making sure that we can utilise that money to reinforce our own revenue position, which is what you would use that money for. To make people in Merseyside safer. So with that, are there any other questions? In that case, it's time to switch all our cameras on. Okay. Are we happy to accept the charging policy?
Yes, agreed.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's agreed. So next item is it the date of the next meeting? So are we happy to have the 29th of July? Well, that's when I guess I'll see you all then, maybe. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
And see you all soon.
See you all soon. Thank you all.
Bye. Stay safe, everybody.
That's the plan.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.